Moses and his people traveled to a mountain known in the scriptures by two names, Horeb and Mount Sinai. Controversy has long surrounded its actual location. Of the many sites proposed for the mountain, the most well-known stands in the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. Each morning throughout the year, pilgrims from around the world climb to the 7,500-foot summit of what is generally considered to be Mount Sinai. Few who walk these well-worn steps realize exactly how this mountain was first identified as the place where the Israelites encountered God.
They read the biblical text with an allegorical approach. They see symbols and images of things everywhere. And then you looked around. The large mountains there, Jebel Musa and some other, it looks a lot like what probably Mount Sinai might have looked like. So already, probably by 350, it seems that some of these monks developed the tradition of identifying Jebel Musa, Jebel Katrina, one of these other mountains in the Sinai Peninsula with the mountain on which Moses himself had actually ascended.
By early in the 4th century A.D., Christian pilgrimages to this mountain had become commonplace. And today, a chapel and a monastery stand at the base of this traditional site of Mount Sinai. Since 1956, archaeological teams have searched for evidence that Moses and the Israelites once camped here for nearly a year after their flight from Egypt.
When it was under Israeli control, they found nothing really which would suggest Israelite interest in that area. Out of over 8,000 inscriptions from the southern half of the Sinai Peninsula, only a handful are Hebrew Aramaic, hardly any.
Does the lack of Hebrew tradition and archaeological evidence discredit the biblical record, as many skeptics have argued? Or does it indicate that Mount Sinai stands somewhere other than the Sinai Peninsula? On this second question, the Bible appears to speak quite clearly. Given the biblical record, some believe that Mount Sinai must be in Midian. But is there any other evidence to support this theory? Several Jewish documents, some written 600 years before Christian traditions, locate the mountain of God in Midianite territory. In 250 BC, a council of 70 scholars translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek for the first time. Their translation of the Exodus account presupposed that Mount Sinai stood in the Arabian Peninsula. 3 centuries later, the Jewish philosopher Philo placed the mountain east of the Sinai Peninsula and south of Palestine. At the same time, the Apostle Paul, who was educated under the Rabbi Gamaliel, also located Mount Sinai in Arabia. Perhaps the most specific description of Mount Sinai's location can be traced to the 1st century historian Josephus, who wrote, "It was the highest of mountains, near the city of Madian." Shortly after this account, Madian was identified in the Arabian Peninsula by the Greek geographer Ptolemy. And 1900 years later, archaeologists excavated this city that, according to ancient records, had once stood near Mount Sinai. The ruins of Madian lie just outside the modern-day town of Al-Bad, near Saudi Arabia's northwest coast. If there is historical evidence to support the location of Mount Sinai in Arabia, is there any specific mountain in this region that fits the biblical description? 15 miles east of the Saudi Arabian town of Al-Bad, such a mountain may well stand. It is called Jebel Alaz.
I have been always interested in archaeological finds that could confirm the truth of the Bible. I felt then I want to come in here to Saudi Arabia and see it for myself. I want to be able to say, I have seen this place.
In 1996, Vivica Pontien entered Saudi Arabia on a work permit. Throughout her search, Pontien encountered a strong local tradition that Moses had once lived in Arabia.
It seems to be a tradition among the locals there that this mountain range is called Jebel Musa. They call it that, and many places have the name of Moses, like there are wells near there that they call Ajin Musa or Bir Musa, which means the well of Moses.
When Pontien finally reached Jebel al-Lawz, her attention was drawn to specific features of the mountain that resembled the biblical description. Most prominent was a jagged peak, more than 8,000 feet in elevation, and blackened, as if scorched by fire. And at its base, an enormous pile of boulders, at least 15 feet high and 60 feet across. The flattened top of this structure had the appearance of being man-made, and etched into its rock faces were petroglyphs of bovine creatures, cattle and bulls. The distinctive horns in some of the inscriptions resemble those found on pictures of sacred Egyptian Apis bulls. Could these stones be the remains of an Israelite altar, once built at the base of a holy mountain? Conclusive investigation is not possible at this time, for Saudi law severely limits all foreign research. Satellite photos of the area have revealed another geographical feature that parallels the biblical account: a sprawling plain of more than 10,000 acres. Flat, surrounded by mountains, and adjacent to the dried bed of an ancient river, it could have provided an ideal place for the Israelite encampment 3,500 years ago. Just west of the mountain stands another possible link to the Exodus account: a towering rock 60 feet high. It is split from top to bottom, and evidence of water erosion is etched into its base. Many features of Jebel al-Lawz reflect the biblical account of Mount Sinai, and as the highest mountain in northwest Arabia, it matches ancient Jewish historical records. Yet whether or not future excavations confirm this site as the actual mountain of God, a considerable body of documentary evidence indicates that Mount Sinai is located somewhere in northwestern Arabia. As a result, we have 2 points by which to plot the first stage of Israel's exodus. For Goshen provided a beginning, and Midian a destination and direction. And between them must lie a body of water. No direct evidence of a crossing anywhere along the eastern border of ancient Egypt has ever been discovered. As a result, accounts of the Exodus are often dismissed as fiction or legend. However, this absence of evidence could again indicate that archaeologists have been looking in the wrong places. For if the biblical descriptions are accurate, then the Red Sea of Moses and the Israelites may be located somewhere other than the lakes and gulf that separate Egypt from the Sinai Peninsula.